Hello, Renaissance artists. I hope you are having a wonderful day. We are on to lesson 4 today. We are going to talk about drawing from life. And so what I have done today is I've gathered a bunch of different things from around my house that I thought would be interesting to just discuss working from life. And we're going to use some new tools today that we're going to add to our arsenal of tools that we use for drawing. So I hope your pencils are sharpened and you're ready to get going. What I want to start out with today when discussing working from life is just the very basic principles of drawing a cube and a sphere and a cylinder. I believe once you master those three shapes, anything opens up. You can see from the worksheets that I've provided that it's just a very simple, in some of these still lifes and the horses, that it's just a series of cylinders and cubes and spheres. And so I thought we would master working from those today. So what I have is a series of objects that contain one or more of those shapes. I'll start over here with this little pile. I don't know that we're going to draw all of these, but I just thought I'd grab some and we'll see what we come up with. I'll do some sketches and show you how we'll go about doing these different things, and then we're going to work on a larger project. All right, so I have just a simple apple, an egg representing our spheres, and a marble. All right, good for spheres. This perfume bottle I thought was interesting because it is a cube and a cylinder, so we can talk about those different things on this one. Then I've got some antique books over here. I love books, and these are great when talking about cubes because we can, cubes come in all shapes and sizes, rectangles, flat. Books are important to learn, and next week Dan is going to teach us more about working in perspective. So we'll get some of that today, and he is going to really do an awesome job next week. So I have just a glass of water. I thought we could talk about cylinders this way and the different, a little pile of these really pretty little cubes like these. I thought we could just stack a few up and just talk about showing how you play with just cubes of this nature. And then I have this beautiful rose, which is basically just a sphere. I put it in a long rectangular today, but I just want to show you how we work out, he's hiding, how we work out the different, what you have here, cylinder, spheres for the joints, and these are more or less cubes, the body parts. I have my pencil holders, just cups and things like that, and that will be, I will just demonstrate some of these just to talk about working on the cylinders and things. So for our final project today, we are going to be doing this wooden hand, okay? Now, I did not provide any worksheets other than just talking about these things in the members page because the object of this lesson is for you to find objects around your home and set them up, okay? So there's no photographs to work from today. So, but if you have something like this, use it. Otherwise, use your own hand. You just gotta hold still. So here's this. And we're going to get to that. That's going to be our bigger project today. And see, in these mannequins like this, they are full of cylinders and spheres, and then the main body is a flattened rectangle like our book. Okay? So I believe that when I was thinking about how best I can teach to work from life, and I think that mastering these shapes, you will learn how to just take these shapes and you'll start seeing them everywhere in nature. You'll see them in portraiture, in figure work. You'll see them in painting dogs or painting trees. The trunk is nothing more than a cylinder. The whole leaf mass is a sphere. Different shaped spheres piled on each other. Clouds. All these different areas in life and nature. Master these shapes and the world opens up to you. All right, so let's get going. All right, so we're going to begin today with talking about spheres, and I thought I'd start with the egg. I'm using a 3B pencil today, just so that you can see my lines, because it's a little more difficult to see on camera. So if you would like to use an H or even a 4H, you certainly are welcome to, and then switch to a darker pencil to get some of those deeper shadows underneath there. All right, so let's get going. Now, we've been talking in the Academy about drawing from mass and values, and trying really hard not to think so much in terms of linear drawing. So let's do some of that today. First of all, you do have to get the shape. You have to get the shape down accurate. And then from there, it becomes a matter of working out values. So this passage right here on the egg, you can't get any lighter than the light of the paper right there. But I see behind the egg a little bit darker shadow. So we're going to add a little bit of that in. So when you're working on shadows and light, you want to break down what you see for shadows into there's different passages of the shadows that we were going to talk about. So over here on this far side of the egg, I'm seeing it a little darker. So I'm taking my pencil and I'm making that area just a stronger shadow, but not down here. Because under the egg, and you can see right there, it's picking up the light bounced from the paper. But what we are seeing that separates the egg from the paper is this strong shadow underneath it. So let's get that in place. And where that goes back. Now this shadow has different values. Here it's darker and it fades away into lighter. So we're going to get some of that. Let's see where it starts on this egg over here. And now I'll just draw the shape. Shadows never have a clean, sharp edge unless it's right by the light source, where it's creating the strongest shadow, right in here. But over here, if you look at this, it's fuzzy. That line over there gets fuzzy. So we're just going to pay attention to those as we move forward with this. All right? Now let's just put a nice thin layer of our 45-degree angle line shadow. Right now, I'm not concerning myself with the variations of value within this shadow at this moment. I'm just getting a thin layer of shadow down. So like that. And that's all we need for that at the moment. Now, I have a kneaded eraser here, and you can clean your old pencil fuzz and pencil stuff out of your eraser just by kneading it a little bit, and then it's cleaner. So you just round it to a point when you need to erase. You can also use your plastic eraser too, your white plastic eraser. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to lift out some of the bounced light in this egg. Taking my eraser, making it a nice sharp point. I don't want this as white as it's going to be over here though, so we want to put just a thin layer of shadow where I see it on this side of the egg. And I'm pressing very lightly. At this moment still, I'm not concerning myself with the varying shades of shadow inside this egg shadow. Just allowing it to define the form. Like that. And now I'm going to put a thin layer of shadow behind the egg over here. Not really shadow, just background color, because I'm going to use this to help sculpt out the white of the egg. It'll give us form. And that might be very difficult to see, but it's just a nice thin layer of color value. All right, so take your kneaded eraser and clean up that edge where the egg meets that background. Now I'm going to just take my pencil and just sharpen that difference a little bit more. And then there's a little shadow underneath the egg going this way. So I'm taking my shadow lines and going just a little bit horizontal now, just to show that that's the table surface. Whenever I want to try to explain a surface, I always try to make my lines going in that direction. All right, so cleaning that up. Nice and sharp. Now I want to come back and get this dark shadow that we see back there. Again, there's a nice sharp clean edge there. And then as that shadow moves away from the strongest light source, back over here, it'll get lighter and lighter. And so I'm applying less pressure to my lines. Okay, and then I see a little bit darker value up here because the light is coming this way, so that creates a strong shadow contrast between the egg and this shadow back here, just a little. All right, now we're going to get some of the shadow on this side of the egg a little bit darker where we see it. And I'm going to start using my shading lines to show the form of the egg this way. So I'm looking at that, and the light is strongest right here. So right on the opposite side of that, the shadow is going to be strongest. And you can see that right there on the egg. If you set this up in your home, you'll want to close windows and shut curtains and just put a strong spotlight if you have a desk lamp or something on your objects that you're doing. That way you get a nice one strong shadow. Many times people set things up on their kitchen table and you get multiple shadows being cast by an object because you're getting light from the window and light from the table and the overhead light and so forth. So try really hard to just streamline all of your light so that you just have one single light source. All right, so there we go with that. And so that sort of showed a little bit of form there. Now this being the lightest light, this passage in here on the egg, if I have all of it being white of the paper over here, it's not going to read proper in the form. So let's just bring this thin layer of value over a little bit more. And that is very, very light touch, just a light, light touch. And again, I'm allowing my pencil marks to show the form of the egg this way. I did my 45-degree angle line first, and then I'll do some of that form going this way across the top. And I'm going to make it a little bit stronger as it comes down under the egg, but then we'll erase some of that bounce light so it really looks like reflected light in the egg there. All right, so I'll take my kneaded eraser and pull out some of that light, just like that. Okay, and very simply, you've drawn from life an egg. Let's do an apple. This might be a little bit different perspective for you, but I will put it right here. Okay, so now, again, just concerning myself with getting the structure, and I don't really care to just make a big circle. When I look at a piece of fruit or anything, I look for all the different angles and the subtle lines that give it strength and solid, a feeling of solidness. And I'm looking at that shadow, and I know it kind of runs off on the spiral there, but we'll just do what we can to suggest it. Okay, very lightly, keeping my marks very light. The shadow comes this way, and then that way. And it joins it. I always look on the edge of this apple to see where that top shadow comes in line this way and hits it right there. So on my drawing, I'm going to come about in the same place if I can get it just so. And I'm going to assume the shadow kind of goes like that. It kind of goes off over there. Okay, now the top stem, I'll draw this a little darker so you can see what I was doing. Okay, There we go. Now the top, we have the fleshy part of the apple coming this way, and the stem is inside here. And then we have a highlight that goes around this way. And so I'm just suggesting where that's going to go, and we'll go back through and actually draw it in. And the stem helps, the stem shadow helps to define that form of this passage in there. We have a shadow coming this way because our light is hitting this direction, like this. So we've got that highlight right here. That means this whole thing is going to get a thin layer of value on it, and then we'll erase those highlights. All right, but for now, let's draw in the shadow that we see on this apple. And first of all, I'm going to start out by drawing the shape of the shadow this way. And there is this bounced light coming up again from the paper. You can see it right there on the apple, so we'll get that in later. Okay, so now I'm putting in a thin layer of shadow. Cleaning up that edge a little. You notice I'm not doing this. I'm just making individual lines that I'll come back through and fill in if I have to. This is the method of shading that we're taught in the classical academies. So now I'm going to come back through, and I see, since the light's hitting here, the strongest shadow is going to be right opposite it, right here. Now I'm going to allow my pencil lines to show form. Bearing in mind that this is going to be lighter down here, so I'm not applying very much pressure down there. And I'm applying lighter pressure here because this isn't as dark as that shadow. All right, now I'm going to get this cast shadow, and again, it's darkest right here where the light is strongest. So spheres often have that bounced light, reflected light that we need to contend with, and as well as softer transitions. You'll see when we work on the cube that it's not so much the softer transitions as the challenge with that then becomes perspective. Now again, here we have the shadow being darker here and lighter over here. See, this switches. This is very dark, the shadow becomes lighter over here because it's picking up more atmosphere back here. So as this shadow moves, I'll make it lighter. There's a passage in here where the shadow on the apple and the shadow in the background are about the same. So we'll just let those blend together. But over here, they're going to switch. I'm going to clean that up a little bit. Okay, so there's our nice strong shadow. And then we're going to pull out this highlight, the bounce light, just a little bit under here. Okay, now we're going to put a thin layer of value over the whole apple. Before I do that, I want to give it a little bit of a tabletop over here. Just nice, soft, horizontal lines to suggest that it is sitting on a table, like that. All right, now we're going to use our lines to help show the form. as we put in this thin value over the whole apple. And I'm curving those lines as the sphere turns away from us. The lines become a gentle C, like this. Okay? And then up here, I'm just looking also at the texture in the apple up here. Well, it's not really texture, but you know, the markings of the skin of the apple. And then coming up around this way. In many ways, we're working on sort of painting and sculpting this apple into existence. We had a wonderful conversation this week on the Facebook member page about is drawing more like painting, or should drawing and painting be separate? And I thought it was a wonderful question, and I wanted to address it here too, that drawing and painting to me are intertwined. It's difficult to separate the two. Yes, you need to have drawing ability in order to paint, because essentially you're training your eye to see, and you have to have that to move forward with painting. But many people want to separate them and keep drawing in its own camp and painting in its own camp. But I prefer to look at drawings that remind me more of paintings rather than paintings that remind me of flat drawings. So that being said, when I'm working on a drawing, to me a successful drawing is one that has that sculptural quality that we feel in paintings. It's not so much about drawing lines and linear work as it is about creating and sculpting out mass and value and form, strong shadows and lost edges and pulled out highlights. So those are things that I look for in a successful drawing. Does it feel like you could actually sculpt this object or person or whatever from this drawing or painting? You want it to feel like solid form. And the way you do that with your drawings is to focus your attention on the values. Okay? So there we've got a nice thin layer over this apple. Now I'm going to observe on this apple that it's a little bit darker on this passage over here, because our lightest light is right here and right here. So just gently getting a nice passage there. A little bit. And then I'm going to pull out that stronger shadow inside the apple here, where we observed that the form of this was creating a shadow in there. And then the shadow of the stem comes up and defines that as well for us. And here's our stem. Let's make it a little darker. And then we have a nice strong accent inside there. Okay. I want to avoid this looking like a hairy apple. That wouldn't be yummy. And so I'm taking my lines and again allowing them to show form this way. And down here where the light is not hitting, I'm going to just put a thin layer of value, a little bit stronger down there. And cleaning up my edges, because again, this is not a hairy apple. Okay, now let's get this softer there. Now I'm going to take my eraser and pull out some of the highlights that we see. Now it really starts to take shape. You know, for this highlight here to stand out, I'm going to darken this passage a little bit more so that we can see that highlight even more. We were talking about doing sparkles on ocean waves or any kind of highlight like that. If you really want something to stand out, a highlight to stand out, you have to darken the area just a little bit surrounding it. and then it'll really pop. All right, so let's see if that helped. That highlight is right there. Okay, let's put a little bit more of that over here. Clean that up. Okay, I think that's it for our apples, so that helps with spheres. And I think I'm just going to briefly demonstrate the rose as a sphere. I don't want to get too involved in this because you can get really carried away on roses because they are beautiful and very ornate. So let's erase that and we'll move this over a little bit more. And just to talk real quick about how this rose is in the form of a sphere. We have the bulb of petals coming up like this, and then the opening where all the petals are right there. And then these petals over here are pretty much cast in shadow. So again, I'm just drawing the form of things. This comes up. We've got a petal coming around to define that shape of that rose. And tucks under. And then this one comes around. So you can set these up in your home just like this. We got this one over here doing its thing. And then these just layer in and around themselves inside here. So what I'm doing is I'm flicking my eye back to this to get those, how they tuck into each other, those petals. Okay, we have these in place. Now we'll come back through here and get some of these inside there. All right, and that's sufficient for that. The point is just to show you that even flowers, daisies, whatever you want, can be as simple as just a sphere. And then the shadow from this is cast this way. And again, it's darker right here, so let's start putting our value passages on here. You can see it's darker here where the light is strongest, and then as we move away it lightens considerably, and then the stem creates its own shadow, but we're not going to worry about that. Okay, so then the shadow of this sphere comes around like this. We're going to put a thin layer on it just like we've been doing. I'm not going to do it on this petal as it turns out because that is picking up more light. And then allowing the pencil marks to show the form. Remember, it's getting the bounced light up in here from the paper, so I don't want that to be very dark. And then it's getting the light hitting from over here. And then inside here, we'll just put a little bit of shadows on these tucked in petals, just to help show the form. Many people like to do flowers, and I thought that it might be interesting just to put one in here, just to show you that it really is just a matter of observing a sphere. And the shadow kind of comes over this way, casting a little shadow on the table. Okay, so that helps with that. And what I want to do now is go beyond spheres and talk about cubes. So we have our little pile of these little glass cubes. You can get these at Michael's, and I just think they're so pretty. I like to put a magnet on the back of these and put them on my fridge. Okay, so now grabbing my 3B pencil, I'm just going to work on a few of these and play with some of that sculptural three-dimensional quality. So just picking one, I'm going to start with that. This might be a little bit difficult for you to see because we're looking at it again from different angles. So I'm going to start with this one on top, looking at that angle. Remember we talked about matching angles in our other lessons? And I'm just drawing this front rectangle on this one cube. All my lines have to be parallel. And this cube just goes straight back like that. Okay, so now it is sitting on another one, and the one underneath this goes straight down, and this matching corner goes straight down, so we'll connect those. And this side is up a little, so we're going to come over there. You can set up piles of sugar cubes like this, or whatever you have in your home to make this work. The key to drawing successful cubes and squares is to make sure that your lines are parallel. Oh, we just lost one of them. So this one needs to be parallel with this and this and that. Okay, so let's get this one back behind there. We couldn't really see that when it was up. It goes like this. I'm also looking at the negative space back in here created by some of those shapes. So this angle is this way, and it goes straight across, back this way. We don't see all of it because there's a cube sitting above it right here. So I'm looking at the angle of that corner and this corner to see where they are in relation to each other. And again, these corners all have to be parallel with each other. But this is a great exercise, and if you don't have little glass cubes or sugar cubes, you can stack up a pile of books willy-nilly like this and just kind of go at it, you know, see what you can put together for exercising. Now work on this guy. And I'm looking at, of course, the negative space in between the different shapes to see where exactly what is that angle exactly and such. Right now, I haven't concerned myself too much with values and shadows, so we'll get to that a little bit. The key of doing cubes, however, is mostly just in getting that perspective accurate. Okay, and then this one is on top, looking at where that angled line is. And then this one, if this is this way, this one has to be parallel this way. All right, so there's my little pile of cubes. I think what I'm going to do is just give them a few shadows just to suggest that my lighting is coming from this way. And all the surfaces on these have a little bit, like they have a highlight on top of the squares. I'm not worried about trying to make these look like glass. Well, that one fell, so we'll just give it a bit of a value here. A shadow underneath. A little over here. This one. And then this. I think a really beautiful painting or drawing would be to really take your time on these and try to make them look like glass if you wanted that challenge. They're so pretty. And it'd be a very interesting challenge. So this side is getting more of the light, so I'm going to darken the top surface of this one. All right, so I'm going to give these a little bit of shadows, cast shadows, just so we have a little form. This one comes out, and we've got just a real subtle shadow as it comes around this way. But the key to working from life is to just observe those little things where there's changes and subtleties in the way the light moves. For example, in this shadow here, it's stronger and then it moves to being lighter that way. And same thing with these over here. It's a little darker and stronger where the light is hitting the object strongest. Like that. A little bit of tabletop in there. All right, so that's it for cubes. Let's draw this perfume bottle. So now I only see a little bit of the top of the cylinder. So that is my elliptical up there, and it's very small, but it comes down parallel sides. And then this line here, because I'm looking at this elliptical pretty straightforward, it's going to match, this bottom line is going to match this line. All right, now I'm going to look at the top surface of this cube to see where it intersects with this cylinder. And it's down this low. And in front of the cylinder, it's very close. So now I'm going to draw those nice straight horizontal lines. I know it's too big, but it's just to illustrate my point that these have to be parallel. And so does the bottom of the bottle. Has to be parallel with those. And make this a little shorter so that it fits in the camera this way. Okay, so now I'm looking at the angles of these lines. And from my perspective, it's going to be a little bit different than what you're seeing. So it comes this way. And then this one has to match. Now this would be a little bit different if you were doing the 1.2 point perspective and so forth. And Dan will be talking more about that next week. So we have down here the same angle. I'm trying to match that there. Now it's a series of vertical lines. And I see a little bit of the side over here. And if you want to use your straight edge, you can do that too, your T-square. It's straight up and down. You would definitely yield better results with the T-square. But so anyway, that is that, and I'm looking again at where the light is coming from, and it's stronger light on this side. So I'm going to cast this in shadow. And then the cylinder lid is casting a stronger shadow this way. And then it's creating a highlight right on the lid here. So these lines on this cylinder here are going to be vertical because this is metal. And metal will create that illusion of vertical highlights and shadows. Not really much going on top of the cylinder. We'll just keep it muted and quiet with a nice thin layer of color value. Then we'll come back through here and erase. I'm going to have to take the eraser out from under our bottle. So there was a bright highlight here, and I'll erase some of our helper lines. Okay, I'm going to draw a little bit of these books. Maybe I'll just draw one. So this again is a little bit different angle for you than it will be for me, but I just wanted to address quickly here the way that this cube is laid out before me. We have the spine coming this way, and I'm looking at the lines going back, and I'm matching this angle with the angle that I'm drawing. You can almost see that straight line going that way. Clean, sharp lines. And then I'm going to match these angles over here. And I'll check. Like this. And like that. I can probably pull it in just a little bit there. And the same thing with this too. So these lines have to be parallel. Okay. And then of course, again, it's just a matter of the cast shadow and capturing the light. Cast shadow. Throughout this year with the Renaissance Academy, we are going to be doing more books and things in our still lifes and addressing more of these cubes, spheres, and cylinders. I'm going to just take and do a nice vertical shadow here, and then I'll come back through and sculpt out a little bit more of that spine shape. Let that just sort of curve that way. Allowing that to, I'm forming the letter C, just like that in there. And give it a stronger accent here where the book touches the counter. And again over here, like that. And then we can just start adding some of the detail of the crinkly book pages and the damaged old spine. And the pages here just suggest some of those pages, and then a little value on the surface. Like that. Let's give it a little bit darker value right here. I want this to have a different value than the side. And go a little darker down here. All right, you can even take your kneaded eraser and pull out just a few of the book's designs and things that you want in there. All right, so a simple book like that. And we've talked about those. Now we're going to talk about cylinders. Now my perspective as I'm drawing this is going to be a little bit different than what you are seeing, but I'm going to do it over here so that you can get a good feel for it, what we're doing. So you're seeing this more from the top looking down, and I'm seeing it a little bit more this way. So I see the glass as starting up here. And it's not a perfect cylinder, it's kind of a squarish glass, but that's okay. I'm only going to do one example of this cylinder because the hand that I will be doing is mostly cylinders, so I'm going to save a lot of this for that. Getting the sides in. Again, the sides on your cylinder are just like on a cube. They're going to be parallel. Straight down. And then we've got just a slight corner of the glass here. Now when you get to the bottom of a cylinder, because your perspective is going to alter, this elliptical here is going to be different than what happens down here. Same thing with this area too. So this is my top elliptical as I see it. The water comes and it starts to be a little bit more open. We can see the circle goes from this at the top, then at the middle it comes like this, and at the bottom we see more of that circle. Which in this case seems like a square. And then down here, water does have a tendency to distort things a little bit, so you just have to kind of be aware of that. Yeah, we're not going to get into doing all of the little detail-y things in the water glass. So just to illustrate the basics of drawing cylinders here. Whatever you manage to find in your home, I hope that some of these might help with reference for that. Just want to make sure that this drawing reads accurately. Okay, and then the shadow casts back that way. Strong right here and fades away. And it's strong in the glass right here. All right. And then we'll get a little bit of the table surface right in here. All right, so that should help a little bit with cylinders. I'd like to get into our hand now. So I'm going to take a pause here and get that set up. Now, when I begin working from life, one of the things that I prefer to do is to start out with a thumbnail sketch. And this is one of the tools that we're going to be using through much of our time here at the Academy. Doing a thumbnail sketch gets your mind already in that place that helps you to know what it is you're going to do when you approach your paper. You don't need to have, your fancy drawing paper or anything really remarkable. I just take a bit of clear copy paper, or you can get a little sketchbooks, whatever. What I want to do here is to just do a little sketch of where I see this hand going, just so that when I start doing it on here, I know a little more of what I'm doing. So I'm looking at, and it's, of course, the perspective is going to be a little bit different for me than it is for you. Just a thumbnail, so it doesn't have to be really big. This is the hand part. I always do hands in 3 parts. The palm, this finger part, and the thumb part. No matter which way your hand is turned, it's just as simple as that. Sometimes the fingers are separated, sometimes they're not, or in a fist. So that's what I'm thinking about here. I've got this cube, and then I'm going to put the fingers in this area, about like that, and then the thumb passage will be coming up in here. So that gives me some idea, and then there's a shadow underneath, like that, just to give yourself an idea. So as we move forward in landscapes, we'll put some thumbnails in little boxes and do our pictures in there, just to give us that idea. So you put those aside to where you can see it, and then we're ready to begin. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to establish the height first. So if I start here, and if I put the tops of the fingers in here, then that gives me a nice working space. Now, that being the case, I'm going to divide this wrist, arm, wrist, and hand, and see, using my pencil, we're going to measure this and see where are we at for how much space does this get and how much is this? Is it evenly divided? So I'm taking my pencil, putting this end right at the tip of this finger, and the tip of the pencil is right where that ball, that sphere of the wrist begins. Okay? And it's holding it there. I'm going to put it right up next to it. Working from life, it's okay to do this. What you don't see is one of my eyes is shut, and the other one is squinted way down. So there's that. Now I want to compare it to the wrist. So if the wrist is this long, how long is it compared to the hand? This measurement gives me from the wrist to the end. So I'm putting this tip of this pencil now at where the wrist starts, and it cuts that about 2/3. So this is about a 1/3, 2/3 split. All right, so that is, I had to switch pencils. So back to my 3B. So let's just estimate that about a 1/3, 2/3 split. So the hand and all the fingers are going to fit in here. Many times when you're working from life, you're going to make your picture a little smaller than what you're working from. If you're working from a photo, you tend to make your picture bigger. So when we did the comparative method, that is something that we made the picture bigger. So here we're going to make it a little smaller. Okay, so I'm just laying this in loosely to figure, here's my first cylinder, here's my sphere, and then here is the first block of the hand. And I'm looking at the way this angle underneath comes up and angles this way. Just getting the block. We'll do some more measuring and using plumb lines and helper lines and so forth as we get further into this hand. So here's my first block, cube, whatever, coming like this. And then what we have here is the thumb passage that's hiding the hand. It's basically like a book. So I'm looking at this angles and the way it comes down. And then we're going to go ahead and put this thumb block in place because it's hiding the rest of that hand, the rest of the palm over there. And I'm looking to see where this thumb block cuts our book here, that's flattened cube, in half, just about in half. A little bit more than a half. So this is the thumb block. All right, now we have to contend with a series of cylinders. So we have the first cylinder, that is the thumb, and I'm looking at the way this goes. We'll come back and measure things in a little bit. Let's just get some of these in place. And the first finger, we have a cylinder in here, or excuse me, a sphere, and then a cylinder here. Another sphere, and a cylinder. And that angles just slightly. Another sphere. And like that. And we had established that this was our boundary. So we worked within those guidelines. The top of the thumb, there's another sphere here. And now with anything, you guess first and then you come back and measure. So we have laid down what we're going to call our truth. Okay? This is what we're going to go with. We're comfortable with that. Now I'm going to come back and measure things to make sure that we're going to use a comparative method to make sure that this matches this, matches this. So let's go with this first thumb block. We're going to use this as our basis. So if that is this long, how long is this compared to that? So I'm going to come over here and take that measurement, that thumb block, like that. That's this long. The tip of the pencil goes right there. My thumb goes on right at the beginning of that. So coming over here, I'm putting the tip of my pencil right where my thumb was over here. Tip of the pencil's going here. Squinting down so I can see this a little flatter. That is exactly how long the thumb is. So coming to my drawing, I'm shrinking my measurement down to here. And then coming up over here. Okay, so remember when we did our lines on the very first lesson? Well, I got mine too long, so there we go. Bring it back down. It's that simple. So there's our thumb. We'll come back through and add the little thumbnail and things like that. So now we're going to take this measurement of this hand block and compare that to the length of the finger from where the finger starts to the tip. So I'm taking my pencil and I'm securing that measurement. tip of my pencil right at the beginning, my thumb here. Now I'm putting the tip of the pencil here, and I'm checking. If that finger was straight, it'd be about the same. But it's a little bent, so let's see. My thumb goes a little beyond that finger, so let's check it here. Right there. Back here. Okay, so I think I got it. I may want to just shave that back a little bit, just to create the equal distance. There. Okay, so with those established now, we've measured them. We are confident that this is in place accurate and this is in place as accurate. Now we can go through and start talking about more of those other things that we were learning. Negative space. When drawing something that is complicated like a hand, it becomes less complicated if you think about it in terms of negative space. Right now, instead of drawing another finger, we're going to draw this background space in here, which is really just an open space like this in between those two. So what I want to do is figure out where that open mouth begins along this journey here. Where does this start? It comes up this way and angles that way. So here's this, and here's this. If you happen to be drawing your own hand, it's the same thing. What is that negative space in there doing? Negative space. If you turn your hand this way, it's not a matter of foreshortening. Don't think about foreshortening. Think about negative space. These are just random abstract shapes. That's all this is. Okay, so we're going to erase some of our initial sketches. Now, if you're not sure, you can check. So we're going to compare. How long is that finger? We want to figure that out now because we've got that negative space passage in here. But you always say, well, did I get it right? So let's figure out. There's that measurement. Let's take the measurement of this thumb that we know is accurate. Closing one eye, I'm getting that measurement on my pencil. There it is. Now I'm going to compare it to that second finger. Going way down to where it starts. That's quite a bit longer than this. So let's see. The thumb is here, and I start here. So I have to bring it down a little bit more. I made it too long. Okay. You can double check that too. Let's grab that measurement of that finger and compare it to something else. Let's compare it to this first finger. That length of that middle finger is about from my thumb to here. So that goes like that. Now that is good. Got it. Okay. Now let's draw the negative space in between that and the next one. And get that shape in there as it makes sense. It cuts right into that knuckle. And then now I'm going to draw the next negative shape, which begins its journey right next to the middle finger first knuckle. So that sphere sits in here. And this one begins about here, comes up, and then we've got this angle here going off that way. Okay, but now we don't know how far over that angle goes. How long is that fingertip? So we'll want to measure that. Taking my thumb, point of the pencil, let's compare it to this thumb. Okay, so it's that first joint long. So there's that to that. And that's how long that wooden tip of that pencil or ring finger is. Just like that. Okay, that comes down. We've got a sphere in here. And then it comes down and cuts that thumb tip. And then we've got the top of that finger on the inside in there. All right, now the pinky. And where does that come out of this thumb? Right about in here. And I'm looking at this negative space in there between the pinky and the ring finger. Right here. I think it's about maybe a little bit narrower. Like that. Comes up and angles. So again, I'm going to check how long that pinky tip is compared to the ring finger. That long. We come over here. It's not quite as long. So here's this one. That one is going to be a little bit longer than this, so we'll bring that in about there. All right, that comes down. We've got a sphere in here, and then it comes in. And just like that, you have a very simple hand. Now I'm going to come back through here and create a little bit more of the finesse of this drawing. So I'm going to ghost out some lines. Remember we talked about ghosting out? This might be kind of hard for you to see at this point, but we're just going to erase some of those and come back through here with a little bit more drawing finesse. So let's get this in. This is where it starts to get fun. The hard part's over. Nice sharp point. And cleaning this up, we've got these spheres in here. We can come back through later and make those look more like spheres if we want. You can always work on these things at home. If you have one of these, or if you have one of those wooden mannequins, those are great. So here's that cylinder. And if we could see the other side, it would be a very narrow elliptical in there. All right, and then so here we have this square of the hand palm part coming this way. Oops, I made that too. So I'm going to clean up this part of the drawing, and then I'll come back through and add some shading. And we've got these spheres in here. Okay, so there's one finger. The next one comes up, and then it's slightly, we have a bit of the cylinder showing us this form in here. Down, and we got our sphere hiding in here. Very small strip of the cylinder in there. We've got our sphere in here. All right, and then this comes over here and does this one. We've got that negative space that we drew. That was so helpful. Around. Now the sphere is hiding inside there. And then this thumb is, we can't forget this, he's right in front. And they don't really give us much of a sphere, but we get the back side of those in there, but we get these great cylinders here. And I will put a little bit of that thumbnail in there. And then coming over here, this little pinky comes up. We got that lovely sphere curve showing us the form of that finger. See these curves? And that sphere is inside there. All right, now, oops, we didn't get this. Comes and it has this graceful curve. Like that. All right, now I'm going to come back through and do some shading in here. So I'm looking at this object and seeing where the shadows are darkest and strongest. The tips of the fingers aren't getting much of the light. But as they move down the cylinders, the light evens out. So the tips are very dark. And then there's accents inside these spheres. So if you're drawing your own hand, you'll want to look for those places where your hand is creating folds or different cast shadows on each other that define the form. And so we're using these cross-hatching lines, very subtle, soft lines to help define the form in here. And you can allow them to curve and arch this way and that way. And over here. And let's get this pinky in here too. We didn't give this very much form. And over here. Let's get that a little bit going down too. And this finger, the pointer finger, is casting a shadow on that. It's nice to pull out some of these nice, sharp, dark accents where you see them. It just gives it, again, that sense of weight and solidity. And this hand, being our only real block in here, has this nice shadow cast this way. And then down here. Right, and we didn't get this finger with very much form, so let's get that in here. We've got these lovely spheres. And this finger especially, where it's closest to us, we can see those a little better. We've got just a subtle shadow on this first finger. So I'm taking my pencil and allowing it, these delicate lines, to show the form this way. And then the thumb has just a little bit of shadow on it. So again, we'll use the same little lines like this, just to suggest form. All right, and that is, we are working with mass to create the illusion of form, which gives you a stronger drawing every time. All right, and then we'll make this sphere look like a sphere in here. And same with this cylinder. Okay, now we'll give it a little bit of a cast shadow underneath and make this nice and dark where the light is hitting its strongest. Let it fade over that way. And we've kind of got it propped up on my drawing book here, so we'll give it just a little bit of that look. There's a shadow underneath it here. All right, so now this was made helpful, or made easier, by doing the thumbnail sketch first, because the challenge, one of the main challenges with working from life is you look at this, and then if you move this way or that way, everything changes. So if you isolate exactly where it is you want to get things from the very beginning, you're less likely to have that stressful challenge of, oh, now it looks so different, I moved, or somebody bumped it, or whatever. So just do the quick little sketch. That's what we're going to do too, as we move forward into all of the other different venues that we work on with the Renaissance Academy. All right, and sign it. All right, I want to thank you guys so much for joining me, and happy drawing, and have a wonderful week. Bye.